Okay, I guess that we can slowly start. Dear colleagues, thanks for your joining in for our third workshop on the long-term flow-based capacity allocation. It's again for the third time organized by ACER-ENTSO-E, and now we have also the significant contribution by Zhao. To remind you, at the first workshop in January, we were still more focused on the capacity calculation. We had fresh core long-term capacity calculation methodology at that time, and then also ENTSOE and TSO colleagues opened the discussion with the draft high-level market design document. On the third workshop in May, we had updates on relevant topics, and we particularly addressed the details of the optimization function on the long-term flow-based allocation. And today we are supposed to dive more deeply into actual work on the amendments of allocation methodologies. We from ACER side, we just received the last evening the single allocation platform proposal, and also maybe not too relevant for market participants, but also CID and FRC methodologies. We are expecting harmonized allocation rules March next year, but we will also partly discuss it today. And perhaps today the main topics will be the particular topics of credit limit and auction evaluation, timings, and the data publication for the long-term auctions as prepared mainly by ENTSOE and Zhao colleagues. So I invite you for, let's say, active participation and discussion for these topics. A few rules for the meeting itself. Please keep your microphone muted when not speaking, and raise your hand when you want to provide comments or questions. Also know that slides will be shared after the meeting, and the meeting has been recorded, and this record will also be shared on ACER's website. So I would now hand over to Ignacio, who will run you through the presentation and the agenda, and then we will carry on. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Soran. Thank you, ACER, for the swift coordination for the preparation of this event. I see Andre also connected. Andre, good morning. Perhaps you want to say a couple of words before I walk through the agenda of today's presentation.
Yeah, greatly appreciate it. Yeah, thank you very much, Zoran, ACER, also Ignacio, and all the colleagues for the preparation of this work. Also, market participants. I think it's a great opportunity to have workshops as such to talk about the topics. As Zoran already said, we provided 3 methodologies in time as planned, and we are now working on the fourth one, the harmonized auction rules, which I think are the most relevant for market participants. So I think I would want to remind everybody that TSOs are open to discuss essentially all items that are on the table or will be on the table in the next months, as the process for the drafting of the HARs, the updates, etc., has just started, so to say, and we have a couple of months to get there. Hence, please be active, help us in the understanding, in your concerns, which we then take home with us and try as far as possible to include them. Additionally, we will continue with workshops as such to keep market participants informed on the progress. But as you may know, the complexity is there, and also the time constraints are there. So we have to really work hard in order to meet the various deadlines or the timings in between. So please work with us in good faith. I think we did so far a very good job, and I think we will do even better because this forum has now established, also now with the support of Zhao, which at the end has the direct link also to the active market participants who are active in the markets and actually put the money on the table. So I suppose this kind of addition to the discussion is extremely welcomed by all parties. So I think I said already way too much. So Ignacio, please take us forward. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andre. Yeah. So let me just walk you through our agenda that we prepare for today. So we will have a first part similar to our previous two workshops. First part more focused on providing an update on the capacity calculation side of the project. So we'll have a couple of speakers from the Nordic and from the core CCRs providing those updates. And then immediately we will jump to the long-term flow-based allocation part, where again we'll have a first overview of the whole project. So what have been happening until today and what's remaining until 2024, 2025, with a brief update on the three FCA methodologies that Søren was touching on. That yes, as a bit of a spoiler, we were able to submit yesterday. And then we will walk through a couple of slides on the HAR and also on the timeline that we have prepared for amending this methodology. And then we'll have a short coffee break, which will be followed by a few updates from our side on some of the processes that may touch market participants' day-to-day operations. So yes, it will be a part where we expect to engage with you a bit more, and especially on the fourth topic that we left for the end, which is the bid prioritization related to the collaterals management, that we know how key, how critical it is for market participants. So this would be it for today, for today's agenda. And I will now leave the floor to Trond, a colleague from Statnett, to present an update on the Nordic, and then he will be followed by Sarah from 50 Hertz. Trond, hope you're on the line.
Yes, I'm here.
Good morning. I leave you the
everyone.
floor, all yours.
Thank you. Well, there's not really much to tell, much that has happened since the last time we had this presentation. We have full focus on the day-ahead implementation of flow-based, and we have run into problems with the simulations due to the fact that the simulation facility hasn't been in operation since early June, and we cannot come up with a new timeline until we know how those simulations are running. And the long-term implementation is connected to the day-ahead and intraday implementation. So until we can start simulation again, we cannot come up with a very firm timeline. But anyhow, what has happened so far is obviously, as most of you know, that the Nordic long-term capacity calculation methodology was decided by ACER in October 2019. And from regulation, we have that the Nordic long-term CCM will go live 12 months after go live of the Nordic flow-based for the day-ahead market. And after 6 months after the go live of the day-ahead, we will start external parallel run with the long-term CCM. So operation will start 6 months after go live with day-ahead flow-based. After day-ahead flow-based go live, that is the operation of parallel runs. Our target solution for the long term is a flow-based solution. But in the meantime, we will have an intermediate solution, which is ATC extraction. This intermediate solution will continue until flow-based is also introduced in the long-term markets. But during the intermediate solution, when we have ATC, both ATC and the FB domains where the ATCs are extracted from will be published. The ATCs are though extracted from the flow-based domains, so the operational security is the same for both solutions. Publication of long-term capacities will be on JAW. We will publish on the transparency platform and also on the Nordic Next platform. Yeah, you can move to the next slide, please. So this is a very simple visualization of the expected way forward. We are currently in development, or the RCC is developing and implementing the long-term solution. And due to the delays that has come as a consequence of the problems with the simulation facility, we do know that the likely go live of flow-based in the Nordics now is in the last half of 2023, and that is as precise as we can be right now. So go live. So 6 months after the go live of the flow-based solution for the day-ahead market in the Nordics, we will start 6 months of parallel runs with the long-term solution. And we cannot actually simulate the market equilibriums. So basically, this will be publication of domains, both flow-based domains and ATC domains. And then in the second half of 2024, there is the likely window for go live of the long-term solution. And after that one, we will continue developing and enhance the long-term solution. And unfortunately, I cannot give you more information than this. This is where we are now. So we are basically in the middle of an implementation period, and we are not quite sure when we will go live with the different phases of the rest of the implementation until go live. If there are any questions, I will leave the floor to Ignacio again.
Thank you very much, Trond. Unless there's any quick reaction, perhaps we can move towards the update to be provided from core. And I hope our core colleague can take over.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Ignacio. For the core, good morning. For the core planning on implementing the long-term capacity calculation, maybe just also an update from you from what has happened since last year when we submitted the methodology and it was approved in November from last year. So you can see the roadmap for the implementation on the next slide. We can go through it shortly afterwards, but maybe we first finalize the background. Thank you. So we have also what we have been doing since the methodology was approved is that we have been working on the business requirements. This includes functional and non-functional requirements, so that we have a final version of these requirements, and we will start the development and implementation phase of the tool. And what we are also doing in parallel right now is that we have a prototype for the long-term capacity calculation tool, and we are running first rounds of experimentations to provide first long-term flow-based domains and see and also work together with allocation group to see how the long-term methodology, what actually is being delivered. Regarding the splitting rules methodology, the core TSOs are currently discussing how this methodology should look like, and the submission is also still open. And maybe one last point from our side, the external parallel run for capacity calculation and allocation. So this will be planned for 2024. For the external parallel run, we need to align the process with JAO. So these are discussions that still need to take place. But we already assume that we will first do a flow-based yearly calculation and allocation, and then we will publish it on the JAO publication tool by mid of 2024 to avoid overlapping with other ongoing operational actions. And then afterwards, we would proceed with the monthly capacity calculation and allocation for the next 6 months. And here we would include the returns and also how the market participants will be involved in this external parallel run. Still needs to be clarified. So if there are any questions on this, otherwise we can go shortly through the roadmap. On the next slide. As you can see, we have been working on the HLBP and requirements. We had since by the end of last year, we had the prototype finalized, well, at least the requirements for the prototype, and then we went on to work on the requirements and the functional and non-functional requirements for the actual tool or the final tool. Since, as you can see in the third lane, industrial tooling development and implementation, we have our prototypes since Q2. We started experimentations. On the RFP process, this would start now, and then we would go into development and implementation, also using the results from the experimentations on some. Yeah, there are still some details where the experimentations will help us, and this will also be the part where the RSC tooling will be adapted. And then on the fourth lane, you can see parallel run and testing, where we will do the FATs, the SATs, and then all the way into the external parallel run by Q2 2024, where we will include JAO and the market participants. And on the other side, the TSOs will be training the operators. So our hope is that we will go live in November 2024 with this roadmap. So if there are no other questions, then we can move to the next topic.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sarah, for the update provided, and also Tron for the update on the Nordics. If there are no questions, I see no hands raised. I propose to move to the next part of the workshop. I see Harald already connecting. Hi, Harald. So yes, I'll leave you the floor to present first the agenda and then all the relevant topics.
Okay, yes, thank you very much, Ignacio. Can you hear me well? Yes?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so today I will present first the roadmap where we are currently with the implementation of the long-term flow-based allocation project, and then I will guide you through the updates of the methodologies. And then my colleague Jim Wilson will take over and give you some dedicated information related to the HAR and individual topics we are currently discussing very intensively within TSO and ENTSOE side. And we also want to discuss today also with the market participants, because currently we have really realized that these are important topics where we shall implement also market participants to come up with a good final solution. So let's please go to the next slide with the roadmap. You will see here we have the red line end of Q3 2022, where we are currently. And you will see that especially also over summer period, we had a very intensive and packed roadmap, especially with the update of the methodologies, which are the CID methodology, the FCA FRC methodology, and the sub-proposal, where we will had the deadline for submission within end of Q3, beginning Q4 this year. The good information, I think it was already mentioned today, is that we indeed managed to fulfill this deadline after very intensive discussions. Yes, and the HAR, as already was also mentioned, there is this bi-yearly process. So for submission of the HAR, we also elaborated what has to be changed and updated related to the long-term flow-based methodology. However, here this input will be coordinated with the general HAR update process, and the submission here is foreseen for beginning of Q2 2023. This is the current standing for the methodologies. Now for the sub CID and HAR, the ball, I say, is at the ACER side to approve, or yes, to approve hopefully these methodologies. And then we have here very good probably and new situation in some kinds. I will describe the individual updates or what has updates they did in these methodologies with the following slide. The next thing you can see here on this slide is requirements definition in parallel to updating the methodologies. We were able now to start and have a clear idea which requirements are needed, and we started drafting internal documents for implementation of such requirements for IT provider and for Chow especially. And here, this is also the point where we have interaction with the market participants, and you see this interaction with market participants is ongoing until at least, I would say, 2020, the end of this year, because this will then seen in the rest of or in some further discussions, especially dedicated to discussions related to the credit limit verification or options for bidding and so on. These are points we really would like to discuss with you, and here we have still the possibility, because requirement definition is not finalized, to consider here market participants' input to the final design of the tooling. Then, independent of that, of course, we start to the development and testing phase, so probably the development phase, which is ongoing then over the most time, over 2023. And in parallel to that, on Q4 2023, we want to start also testing and simulation phase, especially from TSO, Chow, and also capacity calculation entities. And this is then the first part where we check what we have development successfully, hopefully until that time. And with I would say hopefully Q2, beginning of Q2 2024, then there is foreseen the intensive testing phase together with market participants for performing parallel run. Currently, we are discussing how we can doing and this parallel run, that there is really a good change for market participants to know the tool quite well and to have the possibility to check how this long-term flow-based algorithm will work, and depending on market situation and bids, so that it is possible for market participants also to check and evaluate a bit how the tool is reacting based on the bidding strategies and so on. So this is currently the timeline. I said here requirements definition, and here you will see interaction of market participants only to, I say, for 2022. I have to inform you, or I can inform you, this will for sure not the last workshop we have. So this is probably a more or less continuous thing. We will have workshops on demand also after that time, if there is a need on that. Okay, are there so far any questions? If no, then let's go to the next slide, where we have the update on the sub amendment. The sub methodology was one of the first methodologies which were approved from all the FCA methodologies. So the first approval was, I had a look at the end of 2017, and the focus of that first version of the methodology was clear, set to the development and implementation of CHAO as a single point of contact, or the sub-operator dealing with, for all European TSOs, with long-term allocation. This was and therefore, the first draft of sub-methodology was relatively simply, and it does not really concern market participants, more or less, beside the point that the sub as CHAO will be the single point of contact, but there were no dedicated rules written how auctions will be and how requirements of these auctions shall be done. This was the main part which was changed now with this update of the sub-methodology. So I can inform you first, related to the shadow opinion, there were no major changes done so far in the sub. So if you had a look to the shadow, if you had the possibility to look at the sub after the shadow opinion from ACER, there were no major changes. What are the changes we did for the sub methodology? There was the main part in Article 39, the allocation algorithm. Here we defined new products, especially for allocation methods and algorithm. Here the general principles were described now in detail, how prices are defined, that we allocate long-term capacity on a bidding zone border direction level, and all those things which are directly related to, also which are directly related to the bidding and to the allocation itself. The other big update with this new Article 39 was that we also described the mathematical formulation for the NTC-based allocation, which was already implemented or is already implemented since many years, but also the mathematical formulation with the planned flow-based allocation mechanism. Indeed, both mechanisms have the same principles, but of course, in detail, especially based on the capacity calculation methodology, there is a big difference in these two methodologies, because on NTC, the capacity calculation process is focusing on a bidding zone border side, where on the flow-based allocation process, we have this long-term flow-based domain and allocate for all bidding zone borders in one allocation process the available long-term capacities to the market. But in principle, the optimization function principles are for both methodologies the same. And then in Annex 1, here we added also this annex new, because here we described in detail requirements and functionalities of the performance of the tools. This is something which is more or less relevant if for the design of the IT tools, and here all these specifications we need for the IT provider are written down, how long is the tool is allowed to calculate until there is a result. It has to be clarified that there has to be a unique kind of result. So to avoid, if the tool is running, especially for flow-based, this is important, 2 times with the same input data, that we indeed assure that also the output data are the same. What is done with the bids with the same price on the marginal price level, and so on and so on. How to deal here with this? How to make rules? Do we allow to split bids for the results or not, and so on. All these things are here described and are new in the sub amendment. Then let's go to the next methodology. This is FCA CID. CID is standing for congestion income distribution, and this congestion income distribution is clearly related to the distribution of congestion income which is generated in the allocations and distributed then again back to the TSOs. So market participants will not be directly involved or concerned by this methodology. Independent of that, especially on that methodology, there was a huge update because not for NTC world. For NTC world, there is nothing changed, but for CCRs where long-term flow-based is implemented, indeed there was a request of ACER that also the congestion income distribution shall consider this kind of flow-based mechanism, and therefore it was decided now that here for CCRs where long-term flow-based is implemented, that the sharing key finally shall follow the results of the day-ahead market coupling process. This is a consequence because all typically long-term rights are financial transmission rights. They are given back to the TSOs and reallocated in the day-ahead market, and therefore you can assume that especially the day-ahead market then is a fair and complete is a fair market where you allocate all available capacity of all lines, and this sharing key then shall be also used to redistribute the long-term congestion income between TSOs for the future. So this is a big change for TSOs in the sharing key. You as market participant are not concerned anyhow by this. And then to the next methodology. This is FCA-FRC. This is again not directly concerning or absolute not concerning the market participant. However, it is the most important point for you is that because this methodology is dealing with the remuneration of long-term rights, so for you the most important information is that especially for remuneration to market participants there is absolute no change because this is regulated in the HAR, and also in future you will be remunerated for your awarded long-term rights by the market spread of the dedicated bidding zone border direction. However, for TSOs, we decided that also the cost for long-term remuneration is following the approach I explained for CID, which means that also the costs for long-term remuneration will be shared according or following the results of the day-ahead sharing key. So this is also for TSOs a big change, but absolute no change for market participants. This was so far, I think, from my side. Are there any any questions?
There are a couple of questions in the chat. Harold.
Okay.
I don't know if you're able to see one coming from Richard. Are you able to see them?
Just for clarity, it is given that would be offered and activated would be based on it. Yes, the question related to PTRs and FTRs is here. If you have FTRs, indeed there is no possibility for a nomination on that bidding zone borders. Not all bidding zone borders have changed to FTRs, but most, at least in core. But for instance, I know also the bidding zone border from Austria to Italy is still on PTRs. So on this border, you can still, if you have allocated long-term rights, you can still nominate this. Independent of that, we realized and recognized that the nomination of LTRs is getting more and more down. So in practice, it's not relevant. But of course, if PTRs are allocated, you have the possibility and the right to nominate also these rights. If you not nominate PTRs, then there is they are automatically compensated with the use it or sell it principle, and this use it or sell it principle is more or less the same kind of remuneration by market spread as it is automatically done by FTRs, but by FTRs it is automatically all awarded if long-term rights are remunerated, and you have but based on the fact that you get the market spread, market participants will have no financial risks if they allocate a part of capacity they need on the day-ahead market. Is the shadow opinion public? Maybe this can be answered by ACER. How we?
Yes. Well, as you know, it was our shadow opinions was rather made like for practical reasons. It was made like informal communication as word comments to TSO's proposal. So it's not something to be shared. Although there were no big or tremendous comments or remarks from ACER's or NRA side. And as far as I can see here from the presentation, and hopefully when we check the documents, most of our proposals from shadow opinion were accepted.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. And the last question I also can answer. We really hope that, of course, yearly and monthly allocation for 2025. This means monthly allocation for January 2025 will take place and is finalized in December 2024. If and this will be discussed today only if there are unexpected problems. It could occur that we cannot finalize both auctions in December because of technical reasons or timing restrictions, and then it could happen that we need a part of this January until we can finalize these auctions, but we will do everything to avoid this, and the plan is very clearly to finalize those auctions in December 2024 before Christmas, I think. Okay. Are any additional questions now? Because if not, then I would hand over to Jim, explaining the updates, what have done in the HASO so far. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Harald. Jim, it's hard to see the list of market participants. I hope you're in.
I'm here, yes.
Yes, all the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Jim Wilson. I work for the Danish TSO in Eginet, and I'm responsible for the harmonized allocation rules update. As we can see in front of us, we have the timeline of the harmonized allocation rules update. We had a very ambitious timeline starting in May when we sort of got the request from ACER that we will start the drafting. However, when we start looking into the methodologies that Harald just presented, we realized that they will have trickle-down effects to the HAR. So we sort of postponed the drafting of the harmonized allocation rules until we had both ACER's shadow opinion of those methodologies, but also until we actually sent those in and had a final version of those. So we started the update of HAR here in August, and are working in collaboration, of course, with ACER, and we will also send a shadow opinion to ACER with the harmonized allocation rules. And as we can see, we have a workshop, and after that we will continue the drafting. And we have a hearing phases or hearing period, and I want to apologize once again for the time period where this hearing period is. It is over the Christmas break. However, to mitigate this issue, we have prolonged the hearing phase period. So the hearing phase will start hopefully by the beginning of December and be until mid-January. That's not the normal time. We have extended it with 2 weeks just to accommodate that it is over the Christmas period. And once again, my sincerely excuses for this, but this is what could be fitted into the timeline. Our expectation is then to have the final version by end of February and submitted to ACER by beginning of March, 1st of March. Yes. Let's move to the next one. Yes, as said before, the TSO are together with Zhao working on the update of HAR. This is actually a normal procedure that we do bi-yearly. However, this time we needed to have it updated before long-term flow-based allocation goes live, so we moved it 6 months earlier than normally, and also since, of course, ACER requested us to. What we have today is we don't have any real topics to present, or we don't have any concrete proposals to present. What we are right now is we have identified issues in the harmonized allocation rules, both general updates, but also long-term flow-based allocation related changes. Some of the general changes are mostly housekeeping in terms of what parties can be sanctioned and what type of accounts the market participant should have, and just reference and sort of things that just needs to be updated and on a continuous basis. For the long-term flow-based allocation changes, we have identified quite some topics. We have 7 or 8 of them here now, and of course I know there will be a large discussion on the credit limitation, the second bullet here, but I just ask if we can keep that to the discussion that we have set aside for exactly this topic after the coffee break. So we have extended time to just discuss this credit limit and collaterals topic. So please wait with those questions until after the coffee break. But as said, of course, when we introduce long-term flow-based allocation, the auction specification and the auction result determination will change. There will be needed some extra time, and we're not speaking about days or hours. It's actually less time needed for that, but however, there will be extra time needed. There could also be issues with return, and we will, as I said earlier, we will come up with a concrete proposal on how to solve this, but not right now, we have identified that there might be a problem, there might not, but however, we will come up with a concrete proposal to solve this if there is actually an issue. Right now, the process is that both Zhao and the TSO's legal departments are reviewing on if there could be an issue when long-term flow-based allocation go live. And we'll have the answer from those departments in the next coming weeks. And of course, there also need to be an update when there need to be a cancellation of the auction, because there are also other technical issues, and also there are more flow of data between the RCCs, RSCs, and JAO. So there are more data extensions. We also need to include that in the harmonized allocation rules as a cause of canceling the auction. Just to have that again, just housekeeping in terms of having everyone's back in terms of, and everyone knows what will happen in those cases, and there's a clear rules for those incidents when if they happen. Hopefully they will not, but if they happen, there will be a need for clear rules on those incidents. Actually, that was all what I have right now. As I said earlier, we are, and Harald also said earlier, we will have an extra workshop. I know we won't be able to solve the credit limit discussion today, and we will have extra workshop during the falls. One workshop might be dedicated just to these topics, because that is a sensitive topic, and especially in those crazy times that we have now. We know that credit and collaterals is a very sensitive topic for market participants, as it is for the TSOs. So we will, and we really want to have a really good discussion with the market participants on solving this, because we also understand that the credit expectations and the credit need for the market participants will change when we enter into long-term flow-based allocation. We understand that issue. We just want to have a good discussion on how to solve the issue. That was actually all I had for now. I'll be back when we later on, as I said, discuss the credit and collateral. But if there are any questions as of now, please raise them now. And I don't see any extra comments in the chat except those 3 that we had before. So let's give it 10 seconds if there are any questions. I guess we'll leave them for later, and I'll say thank you for now and talk to you in a little bit.
Thank you, Jim. So indeed, if there's any question, please do not hesitate to raise a hand or to post it in the chat. Perhaps we can move and leave the floor to our colleagues from EFET. I think you had a slide reacting on the SAP proposal. Helen.
Hello, yes, good morning, Hélène Robet from ENGIE, and I will present the slide on behalf of EFET and Eurelectric. Maybe you can go to the next slide. So we took note of the SAP proposal that was published this summer. First, thanks for the publication, because we know it was not like an obligation to publish. So we welcome the publication. As you know, we discussed in the May workshop that we would welcome this publication. Of course, we are a bit disappointed that our concerns with regards to the objective functions, you know, as we presented in January and in May at the workshop, have not been considered in the draft, in the SAP proposal. So we take note of that. And so as a consequence, we also understand that you say that maybe in the future you can reconsider the objective function. But so what we propose concretely to have, let's say, a tangible evolution or data is to perform a monitoring when we will be live of the capacity allocated border per border. So to see whether there is indeed a concentration of the allocated capacities at the border where the spread is high, and no or very low volumes allocated at the border where the spread is low. So we really recommend to make a detailed monitoring really per border to assess the impact of the new methodology to the allocation of forward transmission rights. and possibly to launch adaptations or modification of the process in case we conclude that some borders are completely, let's say, not receiving allocation, forward transmission rights in the future. I think the next slides are more related to the bid prioritization. So
yeah, I think we'll split.
So we'll do that in the
slides, yeah.
second part.
Indeed.
So I think that was our main message. And with regard to the document, we consider it's describing quite well what was explained to us in the workshop. So let's say it's fairly well documented and described document. So no big surprise, let's say, to us compared to what we understood from the workshop in May.
Okay, so thank you very much also from our side. We take on board your recommendation. We will assess it internally with the colleagues. Yeah, I guess we can also discuss it with ACER on how to.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to define together and also to present in a workshop what kind of indicator we can put in place. Like we can come with a we can have some ideas, but of course it's welcome if you can discuss that with the experts and see how to measure the fears we have basically with a quantified approach.
All right, thank you, Len.
Welcome.
Is there any further reaction? If not, perhaps I would propose to move towards, yeah, have a quick coffee break until 10 o'clock. I think we're a bit behind the schedule, so yeah, let's do perhaps that pause until 10 o'clock. Talk to you in a few minutes. Thank you. All right. So yeah, perhaps let's get back to the second part of today's workshop. We're running a bit ahead the schedule. So we'll save some time for the discussion on the upcoming topics. But yes, as a brief reminder of what we have ahead of us, I will spend some minutes on touching on the stakeholders engagement from our side and also from your side, and then we hope to engage in or to provide you with some updates on some topics that may affect market participants. So we will count with Marc Leveilly from RTE on topic 1 on auction and capacity calculation publication, and then we will also come with Anna Kirali from YAO to provide an update on 2 more topics. And finally, we'll be closing with some update as Jim already anticipated on the bid prioritization. There's also some slides coming from Hélène and from F8 and Electric, and we expect also some reaction from ACER. So yeah, I will start. Yes, perhaps just going a bit through a list of our latest interactions with the market participants, but also with the ones we expect in the upcoming months. So yeah, we started the whole project with our first workshop back in late January, which was followed up by a second workshop on the topic also in end of May. And today we're hosting this third workshop on the project. So we're touching base, we're aligning and providing an update on the project and on the upcoming work every 3 or 4 months, and we expect to do so until the end of the year as well. So as Jim already said, there will be a fourth long-term flow-based workshop, most likely towards end of November or beginning of December. And this will not just be the only interaction we expect with you, but also through the public consultation on the HAR, where we will need to anticipate you the dates that when this will be starting on. But yes, this will take most likely place during Christmas break, but we will try to extend it those 2 additional weeks so that we can accommodate all your comments. So these have been some recurrent workshops organized by ACER and ENTSOE with the idea of providing an update for market participants. But in between, YAO has also been approaching market participants on perhaps more operational topics. So back in end of March on a survey on potential ICAT changes, and then also in July with a survey on the credit limit and bid prioritization topic, right? And then we received some feedback, especially from F8 and Euroelectric after this survey was launched, where they wonder how this key topic had not been announced in May workshop, and where they were seeing how there was not sufficient time to touch on such a topic, and how there was a need for more involvement of market participants. So just a brief reaction to this. So we started working on this topic right after the workshop. So we were not able to anticipate it back then. We were focused on the amendment of the other methodologies. But we always had it in the radar, and I think it was already indicated in the high-level market design how this topic would be will bring some changes, and how perhaps I stay here for a second, and how it will bring some changes, and how it was a critical process for all, both for TSOs and for market participants. So this first survey performed by YAO in summer was just a first fact-finding mission, was a first touch point with market participants, but we were not expecting it to be the only place to have this discussion, having in mind the relevance of the topic. So it was just a first touch point with you all, and perhaps there was some background missing, which we expect to provide today and also in the next interactions with you. But since the beginning, we had in mind that this would be a key topic to engage with market participants, right? And so we expect to do so and to do in the upcoming months. And at the end of the day, this will need to be reflected into the HAR that will not be submitted from our side until March 2023, meaning there is time for having those discussions. And we expect to do so in the next month. So once we have been able to submit, as it was said before yesterday, these 3 FCA methodologies, we expect to refocus all our efforts in this kind of topics. We've been working on them during the summer also. It's not that we were just focused on the 3 other methodologies. We have been progressing on making those high-level ideas that were discussed in January and February to translating into real requirements, and we've been working on that. But now we will refocus all our attention on that even more, and yeah, we will expect to do this in the next months. So just this as information, and also as you can see, and this will leave me some space to my next slide. We can see 2 kind of interactions with market participants. One more on our side on ENTSOE with some with this form of workshop where we provide an overview of the whole project, and then different touch points from Yao for very particular points, more focused on operational or day-to-day aspects, right? So this is a distinction that we also wanted to set clear today, how Yao or how the single allocation platform deals mainly with operational aspects related to this day-to-day of market participants. And how, yes, they approach you with especially with some kind of service, focus on operational matters, but also perhaps with some regulatory matters, but focus especially on these methodologies that affect market participants, right? Such as the HAR. Whereas on the other hand, we deal mainly with regulatory aspects on these methodologies that can affect the TSO's operations, such as the CAD and FRC presented before, or more an impact into market participants, such as the SAP or the HAR, right? And therefore we see this kind of small distinction. Well, yeah, perhaps Yao approaches market participants that are on the day-to-day operations, and we do approach market participants, but perhaps with a different audience, perhaps more targeting associations and with those with those high-level and regulatory aspects in mind. So yes, this just as a clarification from our side. I hope we were able to shed some light on this. And then I would like to move forward to the content discussions that we are planning for today. So yeah, we are starting to assess some of the processes more in detail. And yeah, together in the discussions we had with our experts and with Yao's experts, we wanted to provide you an update on 4 topics. So we are bringing you 3 experts today for explaining you the potential changes into them. But still having in mind that we are still assessing them. We haven't made a decision yet on them, and that we would expect some of your feedback also on them, so that we can materialize them in a good way towards, especially towards the HAR, right? So we will first touch on auction and capacity calculation publication, and then we will move forward on impact on flow-based allocation process, on auction timings and auction evaluations. So potential changes that we are assessing, and then we will move towards the final discussion on bid prioritization. So this will be from my side, and I will now leave the floor to Mark. Mark, are you in line already?
He's on a critical topic on another call, so maybe if we could start with topic 2.
Yes, sounds good. Thank you, Julian. And Anna, perhaps from Yao. I think she was also running a bit late. Anna, are you with us?
Hello, can you hear me? I am in the call.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect.
Let me bring you to your presentation. And I leave you the floor. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much. So good morning, everybody. I'm Anna Király. I'm the responsible project manager for this project from Joe's side. And I will presenting to you two topics today, which are kind of connected. So I would like to present them together. And after that, then we can address the questions, if any. So the first one is the impact of the flow base on the auction timings. So in flow base, the capacity calculation will take longer than today. And this will have certain impacts that will also impact, of course, the allocation. So we will have to take into account certain constraints that are coming from the capacity calculation process. On top of that, this will be further amplified in December when we have to run the yearly and the monthly auctions together. And on top of that, we also have to address the possibility that in case of major unexpected technical failure, or in case there's a valid market participant contestation, we of course should be and have to rerun the auctions. So these are the constraints that we are working with. And we have identified certain impacts of these constraints. The first one is that throughout the whole year for the monthly auctions, the return period, the deadline of the return submission will change. It will be further away from the opening of the monthly auction than today. And that is done because we will have to collect the returns and then we will have to send them to the TSOs, to the RSCs, so they could be included in the flow-based domain calculation, which, as I mentioned in the beginning, takes longer time. Additionally to this, in December, since we are already struggling with fitting all of the processes within the same month, we will have to possibly shorten certain timings. For example, the opening of the auctions. So usually the yearly auction is opened for 7 days, so 5 working days, while usually the monthly auction is opened for 2 working days. However, most likely we will have to, as I mentioned, shorten these. We will aim for a couple of hours. So we shorten with a couple of hours. But just to be completely transparent, I can imagine that in the future, it might be even 1 or 2 days. Then, as I mentioned, we already are struggling to fit into the normal process within December. Therefore, we have to somehow address the possibility that if we have to run the yearly auction, we just do not have enough time to fully run the monthly auction in December for January market period. Also, if we have to, for whatever reason, rerun the monthly auction for the January market period, there's just not enough time to do that in December. So the TSOs are currently now assessing for both of these scenarios the possibility that we run the monthly auction or the rerun monthly auction for January market period in January, meaning we would be auctioning off less days. We would not be able to auction off a full month, but a limited number of days. However, the exact number of days that we could be auctioning off, the procedural impacts, the technical impacts, the impact on the heart, these are still under investigation. So this is something that we took as a concept, and now we are checking the impacts and the possibilities. Then I would quickly go to the next slide, if feasible. If Ignacio, maybe I could, thank you. So the auction evaluation will also have certain constraints on this timeline, but also on the general process. So already today for the ATC world, in the ATC world, we have certain limitations regarding when the auction evaluation can take place. So when we do the process after the bidding closure, but before sending out the provisional auction results. These constraints are that we are not doing this before 2 o'clock in the afternoon, And that is in order to avoid any technical issues that could come up because of the concurrent processes, and in order to allow Joe enough time, the Joe operators enough time and give them enough possibility to be able to focus on an issue that might come up. So these constraints remain the same in Flowbase, and on top of that, we will have to be able to deal with the situation that we are now running one big auction, meaning if there's only, like, if we have just an issue on one of the borders, we still have to rerun the auction for all of the other borders, meaning the consequences are much higher of an incorrectly evaluated auction than in the ATC world, where it's already very problematic. So in order to allow for Joe enough time to verify the results and to ensure that the auction has been correctly evaluated, we will be extending the auction evaluation phase for the normal process to 2 hours. On top of that, if during these 2 hours we identify the need to further extend this because we need to do further investigations, we should be able to do that with an additional 6 hours. So altogether, maximum up to 8 hours, that could be the maximum length of the auction evaluation. This extension would absolutely be a backup process, not something that Joe would like to utilize frequently, but it is something that we would like to have as a possibility in order to ensure that the results that are sent out are correct. We are talking about hours here. I think it's important to highlight that, and not working hours, meaning that if we start the auction evaluation in the afternoon, as I mentioned, for example, at 2 o'clock, we would still be sending out the provisional auction results on the same day. On top of that, the auction evaluation timing is already included today in the auction specification file. And of course, then this additional deadline, this extended timing deadline, would also be included in the future auction specification. Also, if we foresee the need to utilize this, so to extend the auction evaluation, we would be very careful of making sure that market participants are informed in a timely manner and in as transparent and quick way as feasible. And if we could go to the third slide, maybe. Yes, so I do not necessarily want to go through all of these timings. These slides will be shared with you, so you will also be able to take a look at it. But we just wanted to give you a general idea with using an indicative timeline from core after the alignment with the core region. So you can also see the constraints that we are working with. So, for example, the first bullet point is D. This is the time when Joe would be able to receive the input data, the flow-based domain for the yearly auction, and this cannot be earlier than the last days of November. And then you will see that there are all these working days in terms of opening of the auction, dispute periods, then the return deadline that I mentioned has to be changed. And then if you calculate it, you will see that we end up basically at the end of December. Our hard deadline to be fully ready with the normal process is the 30th of December, 12 o'clock. That is when the first programming authorization files are sent out. And most likely with the normal process, we would be ending the steps somewhere on the previous working day. So you can already see from this timeline that there's a reason why we are struggling with rerunning of the auctions, because there's currently just not enough time to do so. And I think there were maybe some questions. Did I see it well?
There are indeed a couple of questions. I think the first one was coming from Elaine, saying if it will be possible to have an example of the typical calendar of referring to the new the new setup calendar, I think referring to this impact on the auction timings.
Yes, I was referring to this slide indeed. But I see then on the next slide that you provide more detail, but so I think it should be okay. Yeah, I think it should be okay, but I think the more important point is the point from Jérôme than just after.
But yeah, Anna, perhaps you can touch on this, but this is still an assessment, right, of how this could take place, right? So it's yet being assessed by the TSOs.
Sorry, just give me half a second to read the comment. I'm sorry. Well, it depends. Yes, it's something that we will have to align with the TSOs because Joe is limited by when the flow-based parameters could be made available to us. So we will already, the way we have set the current timeline up is taking into account that immediately after we receive the flow-based domain for the yearly auction, we are basically opening it.
Okay, here from my side, Harald Heide, short comment. Of course, it is a good idea, and we are thinking to start the whole process of yearly allocations earlier. However, there are also limitations given based on the fact that for the capacity calculation, we need all information related to specific maintenance periods, reduction periods, and for the dedicated lines for the following year. And this process is also limiting the time when we can earliest give this information to the capacity calculation entity. So it is not possible, for instance, to start early November because there simply this information is not available and coordinated between TSOs, and that makes it difficult to start quite early with the whole process. So it's indeed a difficult thing. We have to discuss and think this because, of course, it's in our interest to have yearly and monthly auctions run as smooth and good as possible.
All right. Thank you, Harald. Is there any further question on these updates provided by Anna?
Rickard, I'm not sure if I'm coming in right. I'm from Nord Pool, but also Europe. Is it possible to ask a question?
Sure, please.
And it's actually in the chat, and I apologize if it is perhaps an ignorant question, but just for everyone to the setting being, these processes, are they still meant to be PTR used to sell it, or are there FTRs, or is there actually a physical component into these executions of the auctions that is also changing from before? Or, I mean, you're going to flow-based, which in itself is a challenging concept, I think, but but can you be clear about what is the relation between what are the outcomes here and what then is going to be made available and executed through, in the essence, the day-ahead and intraday markets? So it was a question in the chat. Are these, so maybe the ignorant, so are these the holders of the results? I mean, the buyers will they be holders of an FTR on variety of borders or something else?
I tried to answer your question. I'm not totally sure if I understood everything correct, but the first answer is, of course, we are allocated. We are planning to, in the case where for the CCR we have flow-based allocation. The capacity calculation is done resulting in a long-term flow-based domain, but the result of the allocation process indeed is exactly more or less the same as it is currently the situation, that the market participants will receive as a result long-term rights per bidding zone border direction. Was this your question?
Well, I need, yeah, but the specific, you say long-term transmission rights on the border. Does that mean in a physical sense or as a hedging sense? Because
that's exactly the same as it is currently under NTC, that you can have, you bid also for a bidding zone border direction. So your bids
no, I'm not talking about the bid. I understand the bid.
The results or the accepted bids, of course, are bidding zone border direction. Only the allocation process is, let's say, a more optimized, because we allocate all bidding zone borders together in one flow-based allocation.
Yeah, but then to be clear, then yes, I understand that.
Help you.
Yeah. Can you please clarify? Is it a financial holding or is it a physical holding of a capacity? Because it makes an enormous difference.
It
will be financial.
Yeah, in fact, as of the next year, the 1st January 2023, in Korea region, on almost all borders, I think there's going to be only the financial transmission rights.
Yeah.
So with the change to the flow-based in 2025, this would not change. So it will be still financial transmission rights options. And to the other question, the physical essence, the flow-based capacity calculation in the long term still is linked to the physical grid and physical ability of the grid. That's why, as discussed, as mentioned by Harald, the capacity calculation process is dependent on the, let's say, physical planning of the grid, because the long-term transmission rights, even though they're financial, they are then translated into the physical, let's say, obligations to TSOs to fulfill in the day-ahead time frame. So that's why they are linked physically to the grid still.
Yes, so, but there are no reservations of capacity.
No, indeed, it's not. It's a financial transmission right, so purely financial instrument.
So when the day, when the day-ahead flow-based domain is set day by day, regardless of what has been allocated here on financial, that will not in itself have an impact, other than, of course, that has it been offered a long-term day-ahead can be, of course, much more, but the TSOs will have to stand ready to apply that physically. But I mean, I'm saying you're not going to restrict the day-ahead allocation on the basis of what you have as an outcome of the long-term transmission rights.
So far in the day-ahead process at the moment, the long-term rights are fully reflected into the physical rights in the day-ahead, even though they are financial on some borders. And as of the next year, still, even though the long-term are financial, they are then physically translated to the day-ahead domain.
But parties who buy don't schedule cross-border. So how can you make it connected? I mean, someone has bought this rights as a hedge on one side, and they're not necessarily going to inject to take out any power.
The TSOs ensure that this let's say long-term domain is also at least, or the day-ahead domain is at as big as the long-term domain or even larger. So it's not smaller. That's the current rules at the moment in the day-ahead capacity calculation regime. So even though the long-term are financial, it is ensured that the day-ahead, which is physical, is at least as big as the long-term one.
Okay, then I think I'm following.
So even though it's a purely financial instrument from the trader's perspective, from the TSO perspective, it has a physical link into the daily domain.
And just to clarify that, Martin, that is not the case in the Nordic. In the Nordic, we don't have long-term inclusion.
Yeah, so I'm talking more about Korea at the moment. Which is, so sorry for not covering the Nordics as well.
So Richard, for financial or for the transmission rights in the Nordics, currently just between DK1 and DK2, there will still be just financial and will have no impact on the long-term flow-based domains.
But
Or
shouldn't
they had flow-based domains. Sorry.
But shouldn't that be yeah? But that shouldn't, yeah. But that doesn't have any impact on the allocation of capacity in a physical sense, either on a flow-based or an NTC basis today. And I can't understand even in the future in core that you would actually potentially have because what as the outcome of these long-term transmission rights on an FDR basis. That doesn't as such say much of anything in terms of what is going to be supply and demand in each bidding zone that causes flows through the region. I mean through Europe in the end. So, but anyway, I guess we can leave it there. But I would really urge to have, if there is any even a minor impact on what is considered for the day ahead flow-based domain, that then on this basis it needs to be clarified, yeah. So that this doesn't translate into a result where these financial transmission rights have been allocated in a I hope a solid process, but that in itself would then render a further limitation or a direct dependency on the day ahead market calculation. So
maybe that's exactly the benefit of financial transmission right, that because of these rights are financial transmission rights, this would mean that they go to 100% back as capacities in the day ahead market. So this assures, especially with financial transmission rights, that you have the highest liquidity, which means the largest possible day ahead flow-based domain if you use for long-term financial transmission rights. So that means that if you have in long-term financial transmission rights, these rights more or less are compensated financially to the long-term holders, to the market participants, and reallocated by 100% in the day-ahead market. That's and this assures to have the maximum liquidity for market participants in the day-ahead market. And as Martin said, in general, you can expect that the day-ahead flow-based domain, it is recalculated in a D-2 process, but in general, this has to be larger than the long-term flow-based domain. Even, yes, in the Nordics, it's not assured by a rule, but it's in practice the same.
Okay, then I'm comforted. So I think I shouldn't take up more time of the meeting. So you can continue on other topics, I guess.
Thank you very much, Rickard, and also the colleagues for providing those clarifications. So before moving to the next topic, I see the last comment coming from Jerome and also supported by Hélène, where I understand that you are requesting for the better understanding to have a clear calendar with deadlines. So we take this request on board. We will assess it internally. As Anne indicated, we're still assessing this. So yeah, once we have a more clear picture, we will, I guess, come back to you. Most likely under the next long-term flow-based allocation workshop. So yeah, I hope that by then we're able to provide you with a more clear picture of such a calendar. And then with an eye on the time, I would propose to move to the next topic. We wanted to provide you with an update. So getting back to the auction and capacity calculation publication, I believe that Mark has already joined us. Mark,
yes.
Can you confirm?
Yes, yes.
All right. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ignacio. So good morning, everyone. Mark Levey from IT. I'm working in the LTCC team and market working group as well. We'll present you quickly all the auction capacity calculation publication, what we foresee to do and the core P2 tool, which is available on the JAW for DRED. So as you can see, basically here on the screenshot, we will retrieve all the same graphical user interface to be integrated for all the long-term data. So basically, it's an ongoing process, and we'll amend and ask the JAO to change a bit this publication tool in order to have two main sections, I would say, one for dead and one for the long term. But you will retrieve everything in the same place in order to have much more simplicity. So if I'm focusing on the long-term flow-based allocation data, which is on the next slide, Ignacio, please. Thank you. So we have plenty of different type of data that we would like to publish. So I will not describe each row of this table, which is quite a big table, but I put all the reference and the details if you want to report and to see exactly what we're forcing to do here. But I will focus here only on certain type of data, like the allocated flow per CNEC and the return LTTR and the curtail LTTR, for example. So basically, for the allocated flow per CNEC, you will retrieve it after computation of the allocated flow by the algorithm, and it will present it simply as a flow in megawatt per CNEC. And basically you can filter out different type of CNECs on the core Puto for the long-term flow-based allocation, which is still not developed. And what kind of other data you could have is the return LTTR as well, from the yearly to the monthly. So here you will have basically one table where you can retrieve all the direction borders with all the return value from the yearly to monthly. And last but not least is the curtail LTTR. So we could have a curtail LTTR in some really rare case, but in that case you could retrieve all those of data as well per borders into a big table with all the NTC values. Values, we'll say, not NTC. Okay, so to not take you so much time, I will just go back to the LTCC published information and capacity calculation. So since we are using basically the same capacity calculation tool provided by the DEAD, mostly, we'll retrieve almost the same data, but the major difference will be that all the data will be the final flow-based domain. We do not have some pre-solve and too many different steps like in DEAD. It's a bit more shorter process. But I think what it could be interested for the market participant would be the validation reduction. So in a capacity calculation, we call this an IVA, which is the invalidation and availability. Well, is the fact that we do not apply we apply a reduction on this CNEC for a certain reason, and you can refer the TSO name and the return branch, the value we applied in the individual validation acknowledgement. That's the name of the AV, sorry. And so here it will be exactly the same presentation as the DEAD, and you will retrieve everything in the same place. And it will also be published in a validation yearly report, where you could have all the yearly reduction for the capacity calculation in long term. All right, and as next slide, Ignacio, please. Yeah, so for all the computation data, as you can also see in this list, you will see the CNEC, the GSK, and all the flow-based parameters per CNEC. So it could be the mean RAM PTDF value and the RAM resulting per CNEC, as well the external constraints, including all the calculation details. So every single value could be retrieved in that case. And the fourth point is based on the kind of fallback procedure where we retrieve an NTC values, which is, I would say, something like the shadow auctioning process in the DEAD, which is a pretty rare case because it's only in case of fallback. So that's it for my part on the core part. So if there is any question, I see that yeah, Jerome, you have a question here. Reading into the chat. Yeah, all the data that is presented here is legally binding by the methodology. So normally all the TSO should provide all of those data, at least for the capacity calculation. Oh, you mean for Nordic? Okay, sorry. All right, so for Nordic, does someone have the answer for this? Because I'm most involved in core region, not so much for Nordic, so do not have all the answer for this.
Well, for Nordics, we will provide all this information and with the name of the CNECs, unless for Sweden, which will have fully anonymized CNEs due to national legislation. Was it an answer?
If I may, this is Jérôme Lepage from IFET. Yeah, thanks for the answer and the confirmation that we'll be missing data publication on from Sweden. We've been discussing this a lot in the context of both day ahead and now long-term flow-based allocation. Market participants still haven't been notified which parts of Swedish legislation prevents Svenska kraftnät from publishing this data. So we would welcome a clear a clarification on which provisions of Swedish law prevent that, and a legal analysis from Svenska kraftnät on this, bearing in mind that we faced the same question for a long time in core, in the case of Germany, and in the end this was solved with the resolution of PNETSA. So we hope to see the same outcome for Sweden, but in the meantime, to help us with this, we would really welcome the legal basis and a legal analysis of Svenska kraftnät. So if this can be passed along to the relevant TSOs, that would be great.
Yeah, I can't answer for SVK and for Sweden, so I can only forward. I don't see anyone from Sweden here today, from SVK today. So yeah, I can pass it along to my Swedish colleagues.
Thank you very much.
By the way, Rickard here, I'm from Nordpol, I'm from Sweden, but Jerome, I of course second the need that is there, if given that there is still doubt about that, but I can tell you that it's the security, and I also have question marks, but it's simply so that all of that these grid components have been classified under national security, just like where you have the, I don't know, but where you may have storage of your arms, I mean, of your ammunition up in the forest, I mean, in somewhere in the ground, where you have all location. I mean, it's been classified. Don't ask me why, but the thing is that they are bound by a law that if they were to provide, that's what they say. If they were to provide, they would breach a law and they could be put in jail. That's what they're saying. I can't just. But the best thing is to get Svenska kraftnät and the relevant Swedish authority to clarify that and to see what can be done, if anything, with it. Yeah, it is definitely a concern. It's been raised in the Nordic flow-based project, and in general, of course, since we all know that many of the limitations in the flow-based domain in the Nordics are related to the Swedish grid, because the Swedish grid is the backbone of the grid in the Nordics in terms of transmission of capacity. It has so much more capacity possibilities to transfer, both crisscrossing west and east and north and south, than any other grid in the Nordics, and not knowing the specific limitations when you go to a flow-based model is of course a concern. So, but I'll stop here. I don't have more info, and it's been a lot of parties trying to get them to clarify more. So it's good if also EFET and Euron can push on that, so that first thing first, get clarification on what legislation it is, and second, is there any process or is there any possibility to change that law to that so that something could be released? But I'll stop there.
All right, thank you very much for those remarks. We will pass the message to our SVK's colleagues. Besides that particular point, is there any other question to the information provided by Mark on the data publication, both for core and also for Nordic? Yep. Have some detailed slides also for you to have as background. If not, I would propose to move to the next topic. Thank you very much, Mark and Trond, for your work on this. And I'll propose to move to the next topic and final topic of today's workshop, which is the topic for on bid prioritization. Jim, I give you back the floor to touch on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ignacio. First of all, well, it's Jim Wilson again from Enigine, but we acknowledge that with long-term flow-based allocation, the credit and collateral requirements on the market participants increase significantly, since the allocation of capacity across Europe is done in one auction. The full capacity for all the bids a market participant puts in needs to be there at that typical or at that specific moment. As it is in today in the ATC world, auctions are spread out over a week period most of the time, and we try to do our best, as that had been a request from the market participants in the previous years as well. We try to spread them out, so if a market participant doesn't win capacity in one auction in the beginning of the week, him or her can use that collateral for an auction later that week. With the long-term flow-based allocation, that is not the case, and the full collateral for the whole auction need to be in place at the auction period or auction time. We have in the process discovered that in the high-level market design that we published, I think it was before the summer, there were a written text in there saying that we need to have the collateral assessment done before the gate closure. During the discussion we have now, we noticed that that is not the case, and we can have the assessment of the collateral per market participants done after the bid closure, but before the auction algorithm starts. So that is something that is solved, but that doesn't have a large effect on the market participants. The issue still stands that the collateral requirements on the market participants needs to be fulfilled at the gate closure when the auction time starts, or gate closure starts. And of course, from the TSO world, TSO community, we would want a good of participation as possible, and of course we want that the credit requirement doesn't have negative impact on the pricing, which has been one of the comments as well. So we're currently assessing the impact and the risk, both technically and financially, as well for the market participants. And we have received feedback from EFIT as well, and a counter proposal to reduce the collaterals. And our expectation is in just to start once again the discussion in this workshop, but also in the coming months and coming workshop to find a solution to better fit all of us, and that makes it possible to manage the long-term flow-based allocation in the best possible way. And to do so, we came up with a couple of proposals on bid prioritization. And if we move to the next slide, there are sort of three options. The one is the bid prioritization by bid component. One is per parameter, and one is a big bid flag. And once again, we strongly would like your impact, but let's put your comments and feedback, but let's take that after I present the options once again. So let's move to the next slide. The first, and there is some animation on the slides, will just simulate some on how bid prioritization can be changed and how different market participants can prioritize differently along the borders and by bids. So in the first option, each specific bid is prioritized. That means that, as we can see, that each bid gets a specific priority number and a unique number. So if a market participant has 30 bids, each one will get a number between 1 and 30. And that is auto-generated when you put this into the web UI. What we see as a big pro with this is that this is very specific for each bid. The market participants can choose what bids should be prioritized and what should be neglected if the collateral is not sufficient to cover all bids. It gives a very much granular bid prioritization. However, there are, of course, drawbacks. One, of course, is that it's a lot of development needed for the web service. It's also more effort on the market participants. The current process in the ATC world is that if a market participant doesn't have sufficient collateral for all their his or her bids, the bids with the lowest price is neglected or deleted. This is more effort on market participants because here it's needed to be prioritized both by borders but also by bids. However, there also needs to be an update with the current sheet that is sent to JAO into the bid document. Here, there needs to be added an extra column, not just quantity and price, but also the priority for each bid. So some pros and cons with this, of course. And then let's move to the next option. So this is a border-specific prioritization. Same process, but here the market participants put up priority in terms of the border him or her wants the most, or the bids that has the highest priority for him or her. Same process. There are some granularity that is lost. However, there is no extra development of the working of the bid sheet that needed by the market participants. Here, instead, there is an extra file that is sent where it's two columns, the border and the priority for each border. Yes, and there are, of course, in this one, we have set it as a default ranking. And if it's not updated, it's the default ranking from the last auction. So that could be a potential risk, of course, for the market participants. But and it's something that needs to be well looked at with if this is the option that could be chosen. And then let's move to the last option, option 3. Here it's very much the same way as it used today. However, market participants can put bids as fixed bids. That's meaning that the bids that are not fixed are the ones first dropped if the collateral is not sufficient. The changes from today is that, and we have the case down here, then the fixed bids, so the bid 3 to the right and 4 to the right and 1 to the left on German, Austria-German, and bid 2 on Austria-German will be the prioritized. So they will be the 4 ones that will be dropped last if the collateral is not sufficient. The ones will drop the first is the ones that are not fixed. So that would be on Austria-German, bid 3 and 4, and on Austria, Czech Republic, bid 1 and 2. Even though they have a higher price on the Austrian-Czech border, a higher price than the fixed bids. However, they are not fixed, so they will be dropped first. So the setup here is exactly the same way for both categories as we have today. So the bids in the non-fixed group will be dropped first based on a lowest price prioritization. And then the group with fixed bids will also be dropped on a price category or price prioritization afterwards. So this is the option that looks at the closest as what we have today, but with a little twist that one market participant can fix certain bids that are important to him or her. Yes. I think that was the last slide for this, and this was the option that we have, and I'm very much up for a discussion as of now.
There seems to be one first question coming from Yves in the chat. Jim, I don't know if you're able to see it. With the bid priority from 1 to 30, a bid with lower priority may become paradoxically rejected. For instance, rejected despite in the money, because the credit limit is reached for bids with higher priority. And the paradox applies in a strict order of priority.
So that is, if I understand the question correct, that's a price or a bid with lower priority has a higher price. Is that the question? If that is the case, yes. The answer is yes.
Thank you.
Is there any other feedback on this topic? We once again, we understand that it's a difficult topic, and especially in these times with credit being and collaterals being a big issue. We of course like all your feedback on how to move forward. There's a hand raised, please.
Yes, Hélène here for Eurelectric and IFET. We have a slide. I don't know if we present it now because it's on this topic.
Yeah, sure.
Unless somebody has feedback beforehand.
I don't know. Ignacio,
Okay.
do we have it available, or could you?
Yeah.
Yes, we do have it.
Okay. So first, maybe some context. As you mentioned, it's a very difficult time for the moment for everyone. So I'm presenting here the views from IFET and Eurelectric, and I just want to remind that it covers a very large amount of companies and market participants who maybe do not have the possibility to participate today due to the crisis we are in. That's the first important point wanted to clarify because apparently it was not clear for everyone. And before entering into the details, maybe also we already provided this feedback from the July poll or consultation. And we would like to suggest that in the future, when there is such an important topic, we avoid making a short poll during the summer period without announcement. So to be honest, we discovered this poll thanks to one of our members, and it was really a surprise. We did not really have an announcement. We had to go through the proposal. So we, of course, welcome to be consulted, but maybe the process could be improved in the future. Now on the content, if you can go to the next slide. Basically, we have a big issue with the proposal, or not really with the proposal, because I think João has made efforts to find solution to a problem. I would rather say that we have a fundamental issue with the problem. And what I mean there is that we understand that the fact to implement this super auction for all borders at the same time with a flow-based algorithm has the merit to increase the efficiency and to increase the surplus, so the auction income. But then, and you remember we had a serious reservation on this, but okay, we take note of the decision, and I don't want to reopen the debate on this today. But nevertheless, we understand a few months later that the implementation of this auction is seriously jeopardized by credit issues. So to say it differently, our understanding is that it's not possible to allow all bids from all market participants to be taken into account in the auction due to collateral issue, and that to solve the problem, we need to make a bid selection or bid filtering, or whatever the way we call it. And for that, João came with some ideas to filter the bids based on ranking made by the market participants. And I think the fundamental issue here is, does it make sense to make an auction without the full merit order list? What are we doing here? I mean, if we do an auction, it's to collect all bids at the same time, and because of the expectation that it is going to improve the efficiency and the surplus. But then we say, no, we can't do it. We have to filter the bids. And so most likely, a part of the bids will be kicked out of the merit order. And so the auction will be performed with only not the full merit order. So what we would like, because now we have had explanation about the 3 solutions that were already proposed in the July poll, so not really new information. We today, to be honest, we miss explanation about the collateral requirements for this kind of auction. So how much would it be? How does it work? How are they calculated? So we really need to take a step back to understand what exactly is at stake. As I said, on the bid prioritization, we consider that, fundamentally speaking, organizing such an auction without all the bids doesn't make any sense. We don't understand then why we do this auction if it comes to a reduction of the merit order compared to individual auctions. It really risks to de-optimize the LTTR allocation for collateral reason. I repeat, for collateral reason, just because of a market design choice to go for one unique auction instead of a border per border auction. So we really call for reconsideration of this in the light of the issue of collateral. So basically, either we find a solution to accommodate all bids in the auction, or we should reconsider the choice of making this auction, maybe by doing some concrete assessments of the impact of the bid filtering and the merit order reduction on the potential benefits of this auction. In 1 year ago, ACER presented a study showing the benefits of this auction in terms of TSO surplus with equivalent grid security. What does it become if you remove a percentage of the bids? And we don't know which percentage we talk about. We miss more in-depth analysis on this. But we are extremely worried about the choices that are being made in terms of market design without assessing the full impact. And now we call for finding a solution to avoid bid filtering, basically. So I don't know if colleagues from EFET or Eurelectric wants to add something. But we are, as I said, we are quite worried, and we really call for putting everyone around the table and finding a solution for that.
Thank you for the input. Just a couple of comments from the TSOs. I want, as you said, I mean, we're not going to comment on the choice of having flow-based allocation as the market design, because there has been questions raised from all involved parties to this. But in terms of the survey, of course, that could have been communicated better. This information is new for most of participants that are not part of EFIT or other organizations, because there was a miscommunication. So I think the information has been useful for some of the market participants, even though might have been old for EFIT. So we're working on the communication in terms of those surveys. There was sort of, just to put a context on that, there was a topic that was heavily discussed among the TSOs during the summer, and we got notified that JAO had a user survey during the summer. We thought it would be benefit to actually get some first feedback on the proposal by JAO. So that's why it was proposed. We could have waited, given the power community more information about this, and then have a survey at a later point. We take that into consideration going forward, of course. And I think that's the only comments that we can really have from the TSO community in terms of how to do it, because I see the counter proposal. I still believe that if we see market spread increasing, that proposal still will be issues with bid prioritization being dropped. It doesn't really solve the pure issue, which, as you pointed out, is something different. It's that we have options at the same time, and I think that is more for some other participants to comment on. But this is the chosen market structure and how to have that discussion. I don't know if this is the right forum or where it should be taking place. But thanks for the input from IFIT. It's useful, and we take note.
Thank you for the feedback on the forum. To be honest, we came with this concern at the MESC. We have been told to discuss it here. Now, if we understand it's not the right forum, it's really time to find the right forum and to put ACER-ENTSO-E, JAO, and the market participants around the table. Because honestly, our feeling now is that we are building complex new methodology for which honestly the benefits are really or could be challenged if we need to perform this bid prioritization. So we really call for an in-depth debate on that.
And once again, thank you. And we from the TSO community, we take fully notice of the feedback and that we see that this might have impact on the pricing of the LTTRs that we're offering and in the end consumers.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe one additional information or point I would like to take to mention is especially related to the bid prioritization. This does not mean, in fact, that any bids have to be rejected as long as the credit limits are sufficient. No one bid at all will be rejected. That's a very important statement. I think that bid prioritization does not mean that any of the bids is automatically or will be rejected automatically or reduced as long as the credit limits are sufficient. So there is no change and no bid is concerned by this bid prioritization. This bid prioritization is only an option we offer from CHAO and TSO side to the market if the credit limit is not sufficient, that we have an intelligent method which bids are rejected first. So it's an additional thing to give more flexibility to the market and not an instrument to delete any bids. This is a very important difference, I think. So because we are aware that based on the fact that there is only one auction per CCR and probably more borders are allocated at the same time, and this will increase the need of credit limit. The risk that the credit limit is not sufficient by a market participant is increased. This is, and to reduce this, if this is in fact the case that the credit limit is not sufficient, then we give you an additional instrument that you can decide which bids shall be rejected first, because the current rule is a very simple and I say stupid one. The current rule would say, independent of the bidding zone border direction or the bidding zone border, the bid with the lowest price shall be rejected first. And with these options, we give you an instrument to make to have an intelligent algorithms which bids shall be rejected first. That's the only difference.
We understand perfectly, and that's precisely the point. Is it means that the optimization algorithm will perform an optimization with possibly bids that have been rejected for collateral reason, which would not have been the case with individual auctions. And what we miss, and that's maybe the first 2 points of our slide, is can we have a more quantified feedback with, I don't know, with simulations or with this kind of elements to understand the risk of having those bids rejected? And I see Jérôme as a hand raised, so I will maybe let him complete my points.
I think thank you, Hélène, for this, and Harald also for the feedback. So I think indeed we appreciate that in the current circumstances and with what has been decided in the past, the TSOs and JAO are coming up with ideas and solutions and indeed stuff where market participants can choose. Still, we're in a completely different setup than today, as Hélène said. Just the sequential auctions that we have now allow market participants to manage collateral in a much more proactive way. So it changes drastically. So as long also as we don't have, as Hélène said, the kind of numbers to assess like how far this will affect our bidding, this is very difficult for us to even accept the concept of bid prioritization. So So additional number on that would be great, and then indeed like a deeper discussions on the fundamentals of all this, if we see that there's no way out of this.
Thanks for the input, Jerome. Of course, that's a very, very hard analysis to make, especially since the numbers from last year or even 2 years before are very much irrelevant due to the current market situation. But we take notice of that you would like to see some more fundamental analysis on the impact on the even before coming with some recommendations or comments on the options proposed. So we take note of that as well. I don't have any more comments on this or more slides on this, and thank you once again for the slides by IFIT. It's always useful to have this discussion, and I think we, as Elaine said, we need to have this discussion moving forward. I don't know if anyone else in participating in an event will have some comments on the way forward or how they see it. Otherwise, I think we should move to the next topic.
Well, this would be the last topic of the presentation. I don't know if from your side I see you connecting, Martin.
That's Martin.
You choose sides to the conversation.
Just to provide some comfort also from ACER side. So we also recognize the problem. We have a lot of sympathy for finding a solution. We will be actively participating in finding the solution. So we are evaluating different options on the table that we have heard so far. And I have to emphasize that this is partly also a regulatory issue. So it's about providing TSOs some guidance how they should manage the risks, because these risks have essentially then the impact on the tariffs. And if TSOs are able to take some more risks, then of course NRAs have to provide some more comfort because they will be, potentially having an impact on the tariffs. So having said that, we are open to find a solution. We recognize the issue, and I'm hopeful that we can find a solution. That's all I can say for now.
Yeah, thank you, Martin, for the input. It's always useful to have ACER's voice as well. Ignacio, I think we can move on then, just to sort of close the workshop. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you very much, Jim, and thank you, Martin. Yeah, we are open to having more discussions with you, not only with the market participants, but also with ACER. Yeah, we pretty much look forward to your guidance on these aspects. But yes, we will continue to brainstorm and think about possible ways to solve the part of the issue, because we understand that the main issue at the end is part of the model chosen for long-term flow-based allocation. But from our side, we will still continue to assess possible solutions that would facilitate market participants day to day. Yeah, I think that will be pretty much from today, unless Soran, you want to make some last remark. I hope we were able to provide you a good overview of the last month's work or the work done by TSOs and also by a single allocation platform, and that we also provided with some space for hearing your views on this new topics that we as I said, we would expect to continue discussions with you until the end of the year, at least. And I think that will be pretty much from my side. Otherwise, we keep in touch, and we pretty much will start preparing for our next fourth workshop on long-term flow-based allocation. So we will try to consider some of the points that were raised today. We'll try to take them home, assess them in the next weeks, and then we will also liaise in parallel with ACER to co-organize this fourth workshop towards the end of the year, where we hope to provide you with some news and also with some additional responses to some of these questions that were posed. And in the meantime, we of course remain at your disposal in case from your side, referring to market participants, you will be able to make some further assessments of some of the information provided today and some of the solutions offered today. In case you will be able to assess them and come up with alternative models or counter proposals, we're always open to have further discussions on them. I think that will be pretty much from my side. I don't know, Soran, if you would have any other final remark.
Yes, actually, I try to make a small wrap up of the main topics, and feel free to contribute, you or any other colleagues that were active during the workshop. So briefly, as we said, the SAP, CID, and FRC methodologies amendments were submitted by the TSOs to ACER yesterday. We also shared them with NRAs this morning. So now they are in our hands for the approval in the next 6 months' time. We will organize the public consultation for SAP, probably during the course of this year, not yet fixed. Then also HAR amendments are expected by TSOs sent to ACER in March next year. Public consultation will be organized by TSOs in December or January, as far as I saw. Then, as Ignacio said, we will prepare the fourth workshop somewhere before the end of this year. That's the rough plan and similar organization. Then more content-wise today, I would say that there are two messages from EFET and Euroelectric, which are important, besides this for the bid prioritization, which is probably the topic of the day. So they ask for standard calendar with deadlines for outage planning, timing of long-term capacity calculation, timing for the auction. So now it's in front of TSOs to consider this and possibly provide this information. I think I would also from ACER side say that it is also welcomed. And further clarifications on data publication limitations, legal basis, and legal analysis by Svenska Kraftnät, because we have heard again the similar messages for the long-term data publication as well as for other time horizons from them. Then specifically for the bid prioritization, upon the TSO's proposals, we heard strong concerns by the market participants. So ACER is also involved in finding a solution, and we expect TSOs to provide more background on collateral requirements. Hopefully, come back with further proposal for the next workshop. So that were the main messages from my side. If somebody wants to add something or correct, feel free, please. Thanks, Helen. And if there are no other contributions or reactions, I would like to thank you for today's workshop and your participation, and hear you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you, Soran. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much to all.
Thank you very much.